Today my talk is about God's bounty or God's supply. This is one of the laws of supply that we talk about in spiritual and metaphysics. And so I want to talk about how we sometimes view the supply in our universe, our world, and in our own lives. So, quick question. What keeps us from God's supply? Us, right? So the question is, if we're keeping ourselves from tapping into the supply, we have to look at how the supply really works. Our source of supply is never cut off. Remember that the eternal bounty of Spirit can be short-circuited only as far as we are concerned. It cannot either be exhausted or depleted. The supply of the universe can never be cut off. I want you to think about how the universe works. When something happens, let's say, I use the example of the water shortage, the drought that we had, not this one or the one before that, but like the one a couple before that. You know which one I'm talking about? All right, when we couldn't wash anything and, you had to, shower once every 3 weeks. It was a long summer. During one of the droughts, right, they built those desalination plants, remember? So when the water supply looked like it was drying up, the universe and its infinite wisdom tapped into something else to allow us to create fresh water. It evolved. In other words, when something slipped out from underneath us, like the water, it was replaced by something else. Are you with me? Okay, so the universe doesn't. Same thing with the electric, the coal and the oil and all that stuff. What happens when we start seeing a supply of something finite in the ground of the universe, okay, or in the water? The universe comes up with another plan. Which is why after the oil and the coal thing starts happening, what do we see now? We see electric cars, we see windmills, we see solar. So in other words, as something was depleted, something came in to replace it. There was a natural ebb and flow of the supply of things. The fear of we're going to run out of something then became, well, we're just going to have to change the way we do things, right? So there isn't ever a finite amount of things the universe can do. It's always going to find its solution. Whether we want it or not, it's always going to find the solution according to our consciousness. So here it goes. If we take our images of thought only from our previous experiences, then we continue in the bondage which those previous experiences created. And the little thing that we always say, if I keep thinking what I always thought, I keep getting what I always got, right? Well, okay, so I'm going to tell you, today I'm going to do a little storytelling because I had a journey on my own this week. I went back to my hometown in Flint, Michigan. Ooh. And I did drink the water. Oh, wait, okay. It's all good. I went back to my hometown for two things. One of them was I finally wanted to allow my dad to be at peace where we grew up in the lake that we grew up, so I put his ashes there. But another thing I wanted to do is I haven't been to my homecoming for 37, I haven't been to my school for 37 years. And one of the reasons I never wanted to go back is because I was really kind of bullied a lot in high school. And I remember specifically this one teacher that I was in class with, and he would witness the kids bullying. He never did anything, and I felt very vulnerable, very exposed, and just kind of felt like half a person. And he never did anything. And of course, it's been 37 years since I graduated, and guess who the only teacher on the property still is? You guessed it, no such thing as a mistake, right? Two things happened. I'll tell you the first one first. So I go to this pep rally. First of all, I walk into the school, and there's a sense of excitement and nausea. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, oh my God, this is, and then like, oh my God. And then there's flashbacks, good ones and not good ones, right? And of course, I go to the pep rally, and who is the first person I see like 10 feet away from me? This person who never did anything about me being bullied. And so I sat there thinking, wow, I'm in bondage to this experience. I mean, ever since I was 15 years old, I've always thought about that. And for 37 years, I haven't gone back because I've always felt like I was going to be exposed. And I felt resentment and anger. And all those emotions came forward. And I'm like, well, should I actually go and confront him and say something? Well, okay, so the story continues. So the pep rally began, and suddenly my energy started to shift, and my friend looked at me and she said, "Are you okay? Are you having like a moment or something?" I said, "Yeah, I'm having a lot of moments right now." And And I told her what exactly I was feeling, and she said, well, you know, what if you go over there and say what you have to say, and you don't hear what he has to say back, that you don't like what he has to say back, right? Or, you know, she said, Joe, one thing I don't think you consider is, at the time he was 24, it was in the 80s, you lived in Flint, Michigan, a real progressive place, I might add. And so, you know, and you went to Catholic high school, and, you know, maybe he just didn't know how to handle it. Maybe he just didn't even know what to say. And I said, but I'll tell you, truthfully, you've heard me before. I have no qualms about saying that I'm in therapy. Well, I talked to my therapist about this exact same thing, that when I was 15, it programmed me to have a sense of fear about people not protecting me and me feeling like I have to protect myself. And it was a very awkward, uneasy feeling. Can anyone relate to that? Okay, all right. So, and we're kind of seeing this evolve on the national stage as well. And there was this vulnerability there. And I kept having a lot of resentment and anger, and I thought, if I go over there, should I just give him a piece of my mind? You know, I'm bigger than he is now. He's a lot older. I'll kick his ass. I'll kick it. I didn't mean to say that. I'll prompt him. Can't believe I just said that. Don't write me a letter. I know, I already did it. So I kept thinking, how am I gonna do this? Because I'm held in bondage, and what am I going to do? And so eventually we shall understand that all human bondage is an invention of ignorance. And so I realized I've been held in bondage. He didn't lose any sleep over it. But for 37 years or more, I've been experiencing that in my mind, this angst about that. And it was my ignorance of the spiritual laws at work that brought this to my attention. And so, why do you think Jesus would say, resist not? That which we refuse to recognize, we neutralize, and it is no longer there so far as we are concerned. So I thought, you know what? I could go forward and talk to him, and the opportunity was there several times. I could even go say, hi, I'm Joe. Do you remember me? I was in your homeroom. I didn't do any of that. I thought of what Dr. Holmes said there. That which we refuse to recognize, we neutralize. And I needed to neutralize that situation right there. And it had nothing to do with him. It had everything to do with me. I have to realize that people do the best they can with what they have to work with. It may not be what I approve of or I think their bar should be, the standard should be, but I was actually being held a hostage without doing anything. I never did the spiritual work around it. And I didn't really think about it because, I teach this stuff on Sundays, right? And I'm up here talking about it. And then I face something 10 feet away, and I think, oh my God, who are you? You're forgetting what you teach. So can you walk away from this? And if you do, you have to walk away from it, always. In other words, done. Conversation's over. No longer harbor that peace in my life. You see, life is like a pie. It's really like a pie. I love pie, right? So imagine a pie. The pie always has to have all of its pieces in place, all different parts of your life. And sometimes there are pieces of the pie I don't like. That doesn't mean the rest of the pie is bad. There's just a piece of the pie. And now some people say, my whole pie sucks. I don't like it. And I would say to you, I bet there are pieces of that pie that are still good. But what happened was I kept focusing on that piece of the pie that I didn't like anymore. But I didn't have the guts to scoop it out and throw it out. I just kept it there and kept eating it over and over again, wondering why I didn't like my life the way it was because I kept repeating that experience. I didn't do the metaphysical work to extract it from the pie and know that the universe has a supply of good to put in its place that's going to replace that. A little peace of mind, a little forgiveness. And that pie said that one piece would fit in and would taste so much better in my life. Thank you. So what is your piece of the pie that you have to get rid of? There's not a person in this room. Marion might be, because she's like next to Jesus over here, but they were roommates in college. I don't know how that worked, but I'm so glad you're here. And now you live closer. Where was I? So I bet you have who here doesn't have a piece that you wouldn't love to go, out? Maybe a couple pieces even, right? Maybe you're harboring resentment or anger over somebody with some situation. Maybe you've got some medical issues or you've got a financial issue, whatever that is. Whatever it is, it's a piece of your pie. And you can't forget that pie, that piece can change and become much more palatable if you trust the law of the universe to fill it in with the right stuff. The problem is the second part of that. The universe has to fill it in with the right stuff. Well, it can only fill it in with what you're doing, what you're thinking. So if I've never entertained the thought of healing it, in other words, I just kept regurgitating that same piece of pie, right? If I kept reliving it over and over, how is the universe ever going to replace it? You and I do the same thing. We just concentrate on the piece that doesn't taste good. The whole emphasis is on the one piece when there's a great pie of life that we can enjoy. And maybe there's a couple pieces you don't like. I get it. But that's not your life. Your life is the aggregate of the entire thing. And you have the ability to change it. So trusting the law of supply to go in where during the drought, right, the plant came up to develop clean water. While the energy was being depleted, suddenly solar and all this other stuff started happening. The universe has an intellect which can rush in and replace that whatever is not functioning with the right stuff if we trust it to do it, if we can get into the flow of it. The problem is we can't get into the flow when all we do is keep eating that piece over and over and over again and then replacing it with our consciousness over and over and over again. And we wonder why we're getting sick, literally getting physically ill over the pie that doesn't taste right to begin with. We're not trusting the supply of the universe. I mean, I lived that out this week. It was really interesting. And then, don't you know, I forgot to tell the first service this. And I don't even think I told you, Trey or Mom. So it was homecoming. So I haven't been back in 37 years, and I saw a bunch of people that from high school, and there was this camaraderie with all their kids playing football, and there was all this energy. They actually have tailgating parties for high school football games, which I'm in. The honorary grand marshal of homecoming was my speech teacher who told me I should never speak in public. I forgot to tell the first service that. And there she is, midfield. Oh, you don't need to interpret anymore. You want to go home, honey? Sure, go home. You're all done. You're done. Yes, you know, she was doing that. You should have seen what I wanted to do. A lot less fingers, but it would have happened. I didn't do it. Like, nope. Be the pie you want. Be the pie you want to eat. So I got to stare a couple demons, and I call them demons, a couple things that have been haunting me for a long time, that changed and actually created the world that I live in today. And so when you have that, you make adjustments for things, but when you realize that there's something at the root of it. So why do we feel like we get knocked down over and over and over again? Well, until we conceive ourselves as possessing good things, we will not possess them. In life, even that which we have will be taken away. So what happened was, as long as I kept my eyes focused on that piece of the pie and that fear and that anxiety, that when you're a kid in school and you are the way I was, you can't share that with your family, or I couldn't at the time, and you can't share it with friends because believe me, we had lots of talks about that with my friends that I was with this last visit. They're like, why didn't you say anything? And I'm like, because I was scared to death, I was scared to death, and that's just what it was. But you don't have to be driven by that piece anymore. Now, the only problem is, unless I can conceive something else different, I'm going to keep repeating the pie, the piece. So now, can I imagine my life? And I told you guys, I'm in therapy, right? I told you guys that, and this is something that he actually said to me. The therapist said, Joe, what would you say to that little boy? And he said this 2 months ago, and then there I was staring at it. What would you say? Nothing, no mistakes. What would you say to that little boy now if you could talk to him? And you could tell him, you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to feel like people are going to attack you. You don't have to feel vulnerable. That you're going to lead an amazing life. with wonderful people and a family and a child and a husband and all the things that you've ever dreamed of. You will do this. But don't let that experience taint your whole life. Because talk to that boy now and tell him how good life is and that you didn't have to experience that anymore. So you can walk away from it if you choose. But see, we have to make a choice to have that conversation internally. And I had to make a choice not to confront him or my speech teacher, and now I have to stop the storyline. I'm allowed to teach from it, but I'm not allowed to eat it. Does that make a difference? Did you see that? But it goes to what you have. That's my story. Now, what's your story? What's your piece? What are you not able to vision? Tomorrow in my class, the Prosperity Plus class is about Prosperity Plus. The plus part is learning life skills to live your dream, not just think about them. Because if you're living your dream, you're not just daydreaming, you're participating in it. So it's a visionary process over the next couple of weeks in that class to create a life that you want to live and vision that and see how you can make that happen versus the life you may be in that has a great vision to it, but it doesn't have legs. The vision doesn't have legs. So unless you can conceive it, so we're going to teach you how to conceive it, but you have to know that that's there. Because if not, even the good things in your life start to be taken away. Things start to fall apart. Next thing. It is natural for us to use past experiences to guide us through life. It's natural. It's a natural inclination. So what do we hold on to, though? Do we hold on to, if it's the natural inclination to use past experiences to guide us through life, why do we harbor and hold on to things that more negatively impact us than the positive things that impact us? Because the nature is that we were programmed that there's always more to do, that we're always not enough. It's like, so I harbor those feelings of resentment and hurts and the relationships and the people and how things used to work, but versus how they do now. And the way it ought to be never matches up. It's so on and so on and so on. So we use those past experiences, but guess what those past experiences are doing? They're making more of the pie I don't like. Ew, that's a good one. Ew. Yeah. They're making more of the pie that I don't want, so I have to make a conscious decision now. You and I have to make a conscious decision. Do I want to harbor those things and continue eating that slice over and over and over again? Because if so, I can, and I'm really good at it. I've gotten used to the taste. It's so bad, but I'll eat it again. Right? Perhaps listen to the guidance and move forward. If the past comes up, consciously nurture and heal that which needed attention. There's always something rooted deeper than the surface experience. So what happened was, as I looked further into myself that day, and I was thinking about my talk this week, and I'm like, it's not that he didn't do anything, it's that I rooted something in that experience that wasn't my truth. I planted, or allowed to have planted, a seed of vulnerability and inadequacy, of being embarrassed, whatever that was. It was more serious than the offense. It was an emotion that I rooted into my being. And I made it a permanent part of me. At least I thought I did. But what I came to realize is it's not a permanent part of me, it's a temporary part of me. Now, I held on to it for far too long. But I had to face him first and trigger all those things at one time in order for me to get into the space to go, wow, forgive them for he knows not what he did, and forgive him and forgive her, my speech teacher, because forgive her for she knew not what she could see in me. Now, I'm not sure who held everything back. It doesn't matter. That's irrelevant. But I can tell you that I'm a different person because I look at things and I trust the law of supply to then come in and create a flow to allow that peace to finally find its way out of my life. But I had to acknowledge it. I had to look at it, had to taste it again, and taste it close up. What about you? That's my story. And it's my history now. But what about you? What in you needs to change? And you'll know, because have you ever been hit by a spiritual 2x4? Or a 4x8? or anything bigger. That's the thing. The universe tries to clue us in a little bit. You know, it starts with a little pencil, right? Next thing you know, it's a 2x4, and then a 4x8, and the next thing you know, you hit a wall. Stop resisting and eliminate any belief in duality or separation from spirit. That's when I forget whose I am. I forget who I am, and I've gone through years of that, believing that I was that, but I'm really not because I forgot, you know? Like I said, I could teach it sometimes, and sometimes it's really hard to experience it when you're facing it. And I realize, you know what? I had a separation from spirit that I've kept alive because of that piece of the pie. And you do too. And that's why we sometimes wonder if God works. Well, God would work if we get rid of the piece of the pie. We have to let it go. We're the ones to release it. It's not going to release itself. You know why? Have you ever gone to the refrigerator when you're not hungry just to look what's in there? And you're thinking, is there a piece of pie in there I didn't look at earlier? Have you ever gone to the refrigerator out of boredom and you're like, hey? Because human nature, when you're bored, starts looking for things to think about. And it goes to the pie that you shouldn't be eating. At least the piece. Does that make sense? I mean, now I go to the refrigerator and I go, what was that coming for? Which was kind of a gift. But anyway, the whole point is that when you have a belief in duality, you believe that that's the way it is and that's the way it's always going to be. But that's not the way it has to be now. Because I can rid myself of that belief of duality and separation from self and spirit. There is a pattern in the universe that wants to create, and each one of us is the key. There is a pattern in the universe, a universal pattern that wants to create your life so that it is happy and harmonious and healthy and fun and loving and joy-filled, all of that. Moment by moment, day by day, hour by hour. Its desire. The universe's innate desire is for us to experience that. And it keeps telling us, get rid of that piece of the pie. There's a whole nother pie there that you're going to love to play in, that you're going to love to eat in your life. What are you waiting for? And it's me that I'm waiting for. I'm the one who keeps asking this uninvited guest to stay. Have you ever think about it. I'm hosting in my head people and situations that I would never invite into my home now. But why do I do it? Why do I continue to host those experiences and have that nonstop guest from hell? Bringing to my life hell. But we do it. We host them, and they own us, and they run us, and they direct us in a direction we don't want to go. So, time to evict some people out of your consciousness that have harmed you. It's time to take some of the pieces of the pie and toss them, knowing that the universe abhors a vacuum, and when you consciously put the vision, which we teach tomorrow, which we constantly put the vision into it, then the piece of the people change. Make a demand upon the universe, it will respond. It's when we get out of the habit of doing that. Does that make sense? Yes. So, how are you walking your path? How are you walking your path? Do you like the path that you're on? And here's a question. Would anyone voluntarily join you? Do people go like this? You are having such a good time, I want to hang with you. Because then you know you're doing it really right. Right? The question is, if you're not, if any part of those questions, if you're not walking your path with that kind of idea, if you don't like the path that you're on, you don't like the pieces of the pie, what are you going to do about it? One more quick story. So we had a young gentleman who started, I think, Tim, how old were you when you started here? 13. He was 13 years old, and he was the smartest thing that could work our tech room, right? He was brilliant. He still is brilliant. He's 13 years old, and he worked for us for many, many years in the tech room. And he moved on, and what happened was recently we met, and he gave me permission to tell the story. Recently we met, and I said, so, Tim, did you listen to what you heard during that time in our, he's like, every week I listened. And I said, so what have you done since then? He's like, nothing. There you go. That's why things are the way they are, because you're not continuing your spiritual practices. So if you don't like the path that you're on, you got to come back and start establishing a new path. And I'm so happy to see him here because that's exactly what he's doing. And it was the fact that when you're introduced to this stuff, you start seeing things crumble a little bit, then you know what you need to do. You just have to show up. The key is showing up. Knowing what you have to change and showing up so the change can occur. So end your lesson. Thank you, people.